Have you got an FDM printer and you want to know how to orientate your parts so that you can 3D print a alternate doll? That's what this video is for. Okay, let's just dive right in. So I'm using Bambu Slicer. The steps are going to be similar to any other slicing program you have. I also use Cura Slicer and all of those other ones. I use Prusa Slicer, Cura Slicer, and Bambu Slicer. The first thing you're going to want to do is import your files. So I'm going to create a new project right here. And I'm going to go to this import button to add. Now, I think for Cura Slicer, there's also an icon, or you can go to File, Import. I'm going to import all of the parts for my doll. I'm just going to select all of them, click Open. It's loading. Okay. Putting all of our files in here. So, now we have all these bad boys laid out and about. What I'm going to do is move them around, get them out of my way for the moment. I'm just going to shove them off the build plate. Out of my way. So, you can get different looks depending on how you slice your files. You can use gradient filament and get really cool things. You can use regular filament. The most important thing I want to talk about is how to reduce the layer lines being as obvious on your object as possible. So, I'm going to start with the feet. So, when you have feet objects, the best way to orientate them is with the toes pointing up. You could do them flat-footed and it would have more support, better bed adhesion, but we want the layer lines to end at the tips of objects. So I'm going to leave these feet pointing upright. I'm also going to put my tallest objects at the front of my build plate and my shortest ones at the back. I think if you're using an ender, you usually do it the opposite direction. I've just found that for my Bambu Lab P1P, putting my taller objects at the front works better. Okay, so now we have some arm pieces here. What I want to do is I want these arms to have the best bed adhesion possible, and I also want the layer lines to not be super obvious. So if we were to print it this way, the layer lines are going to be going left to right. That's going to look super obvious, and it's not going to look great on a printed doll. It's fine if you're making like a prototype, but I would just go ahead and we're going to rotate this. And I want him to stand upright on his wrist socket. You know, this guy's already doing that. So we'll put him over here by the feet. He's a little bit shorter than the feet. So we'll put him over there. Oh, for some reason I have other feet. Get the right size ones. Okay, I guess those are both the same. Just get rid of those. I also have duplicate hands. Weird. I feel like I have duplicates of everything. I'm going to go ahead and re-import my object. Okay, here we go. There we go. That's better. So we'll start with the chest as well. I've had a couple issues with this chest continuing to fail, so I ended up having to print it this way. But ideally, we want it to print with the print lines going up and down, because it looks cleaner that way. So I'm going to try and put him here, and I'll do that. For this guy, I usually like to print with the thigh entryways down. Like this. You can also slightly angle it at like a 45-degree angle and it'll look good, but I try to keep these pieces as totally up and down as I can. The feet are exactly how I want the feet to be already. This is the arm. So I could put it on the lower part of the arm where the elbow piece will go, but I'm going to put it on the ball end because that is bigger. There's more surface there. So it'll have better bed adhesion. We kind of want our objects to taper towards the top like a pyramid or a triangle, because then you have less supports. We'll do the same thing for this one. Oops. when you rotate objects, you can hover your mouse cursor over these. Oh my goodness, there's a bunny on me. And it'll click to where you want it, like a little compassy guy. I'll rotate him so that he's a mirror of the other one. There we go. Same thing with this. I want to put him on the ball socket because it's bigger down at that end. Let's see. Yeah, that's like basically straight up and down. This one I want on the ankle because it's flatter. And if I find that my prints are failing, even when they have supports and stuff like that, you can change the orientation. Because if you have enough supports, like I'll show you what supports I use here in a moment, and it's still having failures, that generally means it's an orientation issue. Excuse me. I want to rotate this hand. Like that. Now for knees, definitely try to keep them up and downish. You can keep them at a 45-degree angle if that's better, if they have little pegs on them like these ones. But you don't want to print them on their side. I think it just creates some weird layer lines, and then it won't rotate properly, and sometimes they won't even fit correctly into the socket. So for mine, I'm going to just continue to put them like that. Excuse me. Okay, these are the elbows. I want the elbows up and down. I've printed elbows sideways before, and they work, but it's better to have them at this orientation with the ball socket on the bottom. Okay, now we've got all of the parts so far rotated how I want. Can I just move? Thank you. So now we have to lay them out on our plate. This is a disaster. We don't want them just all willy-nilly all over the place. For my Bambu P1P, I like to keep my tall pieces at the front and my smaller pieces at the back. I don't know why, I just find that that works better. So what I like to do is I like to put the hip piece in the middle, then we'll do the chest piece behind it. We're going to make a slope, the tallest pieces being at the front. Another thing that I like to do is kind of put them on opposite sides. Like that. Now we want to have a little bit of a gap between our stuff because we're going to be generating some supports here. Okay, now the next shortest pieces are going to be these arms. Then I think it's going to be these arms. And then I think the next tallest part is the feet. Actually, I'll put these out there. I'll put the feet right here. And we want our objects kind of close together because the less distance the print head has to travel, the faster the print will print. But again, we need to have space between these for the supports we're going to be generating. Okay. So as you can see, I have my tallest parts towards the front, my smallest ones towards the back. On a Creality Ender 3, for example, I would have it the reverse. So you could just select all of them and rotate them. Just whatever works best for your printer. I'm not sure why I like to have mine at the front on my Bambu. I was printing the legs at the back when I was first doing it with my Bambu P1P, and I just had a couple failures and was like, eh. So, now we need to discuss infill and supports. So, the type of infill that you want to use is going to be the same in Bambu Slicer as it is in Cura Slicer. And I can pull Cura Slicer up as well. Let me just pop that up and change my screen to capture both. There we go. We'll just do that. Hide my slicer. Okay, so this is just capturing all of my computer right now. So that you can see. Okay, so we're getting Cura Slicer loaded up. It takes a while. But in Bambu Slicer, you're going to go to Quality, and I like to use a 0.2, just a regular layer height. If you want to, you can push it to 0.25, but for a doll, you want it to look real nice. So I'm just going to leave it at 2. Now we're going to go to the Strength tab, and we're going to change the infill pattern to gyroid. You don't want to use grid. You want gyroid or you want cubic. These are the toughest ones. You also want your infill to be 30%. Oh, before we continue, I forgot to load the headpieces. So let me show you how to orientate the headpieces. So faceplate. Now this faceplate and this head back are not mine. I made the body, but these are parts that the artist, Don Kenny, the artist of By Shonen House, sent me so that I could sculpt a mimic body for my Steve with his permission. I won't be sharing any of the Steve parts in my shop or anywhere. This is just purely for me, for fun. So you might just want to lay the face flat like this, but I wouldn't. I would honestly, I like to point my prints so that my chin is the tip. This will be the last part that the printer touches. The nozzle will end here because it's going to go whoop, 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 and make all these lines. And if you leave it like this, you're going to have a really obvious circle line here on his forehead, his nose, and his chin. If we rotate it about 45-degree angles, you can even do it a little bit more, like this. You can even do that. You'll have straight lines across, so the layer lines will be pretty smooth except for on the tip of the chin, where it will have that one circle, and right here under the chin. So whenever I'm orientating doll parts, I try to have the chin be the last part where the nozzle touches. So I will move him about right there. I'm not actually going to print him. I have a bunch of Steve faceplates that I purchased from the artist. So this is just an example. For the head back, it doesn't matter so much because it's the head back. You're going to put a wig on it. But if you wanted to, you could have a really clean magnet well if you leave it straight up and down like this. Or if you want it to be nice and clean and have a nice clean back and front. And actually, you know what? You do kind of want this nice and clean on this edge because the less weird layers you have right here, the smoother that fit will be. So I would print this like this because I want the supports to be in here, not on top and in the way. He's going to have a big, nice round thing right there as this completes this final layer, but that's okay. So I also need to make sure that those are in the right spots. I would personally put the face right about here and the head right about there. But I'm, again, not printing those. That's just how I would orientate them. So we've done our strength, which is a 30% infill density, and the gyroid. You can use you can use cubic, but you don't want to use grid. You want to use gyroid or cubic. Those are the toughest ones because these are going to be under a lot of pressure, and you want a minimum infill of 30% for any joint pieces. So like the knee or anywhere where an S-hook is going to rest, you need that 30% infill. If I'm printing like ears, like my Cabot ears that are really big, they're like half the size of the body, I've done that at an infill of 10 to 15 because that makes it lighter. That's the perk of using PLA, is that you can make it lighter versus resin is always kind of solid inside. Now we're going to go to our supports. And again, I will show you how to set these options up in Cura after I do it in here. First off, you want to enable supports, and you want to use tree. You can use auto, but tree is better. So once you set it to supports, tree, you can even use a brim if you want, which would be under the others tab. I just have the brim set to auto. It'll make a brim if it feels like it, if it thinks that it needs it. You're gonna hit slice, and that's gonna think for a bit. So for Cura slicer, I would use the standard quality instead of low quality because this tells you your layer height. So we want a 0.2 layer height. I don't care about those. And I'm gonna once again pretend to import my parts in here. So we're gonna go to File. Wait, maybe it's not there. I haven't used this one in a minute. Well, we'll just drag and drop them because that's the only way I know how to do it. Sorry, my desktop is a mess. There you are. Okay, we're just gonna take some of these STLs and just pop them in here. I'm just gonna drag and drop him. So we're gonna rotate him, which would be right here. Oh, I think 90 degrees, so he's up and down. So for Cura slicer, you want to do standard or super or dynamic. If you want to do a draft print and have it go pretty fast, you can use standard. I don't think it looks bad at standard. If you want the layer lines to be super, super thin, use super or dynamic. Just also depends on your nozzle. I don't mess with the wall thickness. I just use the regular 2. So here's your infill. You want it to be 30%, and you want it to be gyroid. Now, for Cura slicer to activate tree supports, I usually search support. And we're going to click generate support. Once you click that box, where'd it go? Support structure, tree. That's what we want. We want to use the tree. So we have the gyroid infill, a 30% infill, and we have our tree supports. So assuming you lay out all of your dog, then you would slice it. Then it's gonna use all its brain power to think. So I'm gonna pop back over to this one. So you can see here, we did build some of these tree supports. These long, skinny noodle things, those are tree supports. And it will automatically generate those. You can build your own supports, but for the most part, this usually works. So since I'm ready to print this thing, I'll just send it to my printer. It's now ready, and I know it's going to cost me 200 grams of filament, and it's going to take my Bambu P1P 8 hours and 31 minutes, 8 hours and 36 minutes to print this whole thing. And for this, it will take 6 hours to print the hip piece. Man, my Bambu Lab P1P is so fast. But that, my friends, is how you would orientate your parts, what infills you would use, and what supports. If you use a different slicer software, let me know and I can try and pull that up and look through it and help you find those options. But we've gone through Cura and Bambu. The rest of the support software is probably all very similar. But that's it. Happy slicing!